It is 8:30, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I would just remind everybody that there will be an opportunity towards the end of the meeting for the public to come up and address the commission with whatever issues they may have. And so with that, I would ask that the roll be called.
For the record, the State Highway Commission is assembled in the NDOT headquarters at 1500 Nebraska Parkway in Lincoln, Nebraska. The date is Friday, January 17th, 2025, and the time is 8:30 a.m. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted in the room. Koppel.
Here.
Hawks.
Here.
Kindig.
Here.
Leaf Green.
Here.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Mello.
Here.
Wolford.
Here.
The next item of business on our agenda is approval of the December 6, 2024 meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Koppel.
Yes.
Hawks.
Yes.
Kindig.
Yes.
Leaf Green.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Mello.
Yes.
Wolford.
Next is introductions, and I know that we have a couple of state senators with us, one who I know quite well. But anyway, gentlemen, if you would stand up and introduce yourself, and ladies.
Adams County, Kearney County, and Phelps County. So thank you very much for having us here.
Thank you for coming.
Dan June, with the Amherst District 41, as 8 counties, Buffalo, Hall, Greeley, Howard, Boone, Valley, Sherman.
Paul Stroman, District 47, it's essentially the Panhandle, the 9 counties out there from Harrison all the way over to Paxton. So I think it's a chunk of the western part of the state.
Senator Tanya Storr, I'm District 43, and covers the chunk of Nebraska, quite frankly. 11 counties, all the way from Dawes County over to Boyd County and down to Custer County. And I will be serving on transportation.
Great. We really appreciate you being here and sitting in on our meeting here this morning. The next item we have on here is the director's report or remarks. So Vicki, I would turn it over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you to the senators for attending. This is probably one of our most highly attended in terms of elected officials meetings, and we very much appreciate the support we've gotten from the legislature and from the administration over the course of the last 2 years. We've been very successful as an agency, and you'll hear about some of that success today in terms of where we are with bonding and moving forward as an innovative finance state. But last month, we heard from Jody Gibson and the Infrastructure Hub on some of the initiatives we have for the federal grants. And so I did just want to make sure that the commissioners knew that over the course of the last week, we've been awarded as a state over $72 million. And the biggest recipient of that grant would be the city of Lincoln with the 33rd and Cornhusker project. So that is a rail safety project. It's a decade in the making, and it'll make a huge impact to the city of Lincoln as well as the state in terms of safety and efficiency of freight. So we're very excited. There is $25 million in Nebraska DOT funds going to that project. And so we are an invested partner in terms of making sure that that project is a success. And we'll be working with the city of Lincoln and the Rail Safety District on making sure that that project moves forward efficiently. So very exciting. We also saw Norfolk received a RAISE grant for a trail project. And so the diversification of different transportation projects continues to move forward with this bill. I know there's been some questions since we do have an administration next week, or administration change next week. We do have, as a DOT, we do have projects and grant applications pending at the US DOT level, both at FHWA and within other modes. And so we would expect a slight delay in some of those awards or some of those decisions, but we'll continue to work with the modes, whether it be FHWA, FTA, or FRA, as well as US DOT to make sure that those get through in a timely manner. It's a consistent complaint that the states have had, is that US DOTs kind of drag their feet with grants. But we do want to see them continue to move quickly if we can, or to actually start moving quickly. Probably of note, the one that we have that's still pending or has just been turned in is the regional accelerator that deals with technical assistance for us to move forward with innovative finance. And so we're excited to hear back on that $2 million and whether or not we'll be able to get some of that technical assistance and really stand up a true hub that looks at how we fund projects. So exciting times for that. In the world of USDOT, Secretary nominee Duffy did have his confirmation hearing this week. And so Senator Fisher was on the committee that questioned him. We were able to watch and get some good input from her and from others in terms of what his philosophy is on transportation, and we're excited to be able to work with him. We will be working with the administration, the Pillen administration, in order to invite Secretary Duffy to the state and hopefully bring FHWA along with him. We do not have an FHWA nominee yet, but we do have a deputy secretary at USDOT level, and there is some continuity there as he was in the previous administration. So all in all, the hope is least amount of impact as possible with the administration change, since we are moving into year 4 of the IIJA. Coming back to the state, Governor Pillen did offer his state of the state this week. One thing that you'll notice is a lot of attention on the budget. As we work through the legislative bills and the updates throughout the next couple months, we'll make sure you understand where we are in the budget. The majority of the increase that you will see from the department and our request to Governor Pillen has to do with matching our IIJA funds. So for the first 4 years of the IIJA bill, that match funds for the federal side was actually paid for from a general fund transfer. We ate the first year, and then the first 3 years after that were that 100 million general fund transfer. And so we do need to up the increase by about 46 million in order to get the IIJA match so that we don't leave any federal dollars on the table. So the majority of increase you see from our budget has to do with making sure that we don't leave those federal dollars. In terms of initiatives from the state DOT, what you'll see is the same thing that we've talked about over the course of the last 2 years: safety. Figuring out how we can work with our legislative members to improve the safety of our roads. And so we're excited to see some of those bills start to move forward and to be dropped. And so we'll keep you updated as they evolve. Things are moving rather quickly. And so we do have a few bills that need to be amended as we work through them. And so Ryan will be pushing out an update probably end of this month that has the final look at what those initiatives are. So excited for right now. They range from a change to the move over law, cameras in work zones so that we can really figure out how to change driver behavior within our work zones, remembering that we have lost two staff members in work zones over the last year. So making sure that we can do whatever we possibly can do to protect ourselves and our contractors. So look forward to working with the legislature on that. There's also a few other members who have introduced bills, one a hands-free bill. We've seen several initiatives that dealt with texting while driving over the course of the last few years. And so this taps into some of the best practices we've seen across states to where they really just take the phone out of the hands. And so we don't get into this back and forth of were they texting, were they looking at a video, were they sending an email, were they making a phone call? Addressing the fact that anytime a phone is in your hand, you're going to be a distracted driver, and distracted driving is on the rise. And what do we do to improve the safety of our roadways? We get the distractions out of the way. So excited to work with the legislature on that, as well as continuing to find ways to create efficiency within our business practices. So with that, Commissioner, I will yield back my time.
Thank you, Vicki. Any questions from the commission of Vicki at this time? Seeing none, at our last meeting, we took a big step for the state and we approved bonding. And so this morning, we're going to hear a report from Lynn Heaton about where we're at with the bonding process.
Yes, good morning, commissioners. Again, it's nice to see you all this morning. I have a relatively brief update for you this morning, so no PowerPoint. We have, so here's the sort of, I just want to update you on the things we've been up to since your approval of the bond resolution at your December meeting. So we've since then been working quite a bit as an NDOT team along with our advisors to prepare what's called a preliminary official statement. The preliminary official statement has as much information as is needed for the investor community to understand our what we're issuing, how we're going to use the funds, what the pledged revenues are, things of that nature. And so it's got a lot of information specific to the NDOT, in addition to how we use federal funds, things of that nature. So that document was completed and was presented or sent to, along with what's called a notice of sale to the bond rating agency. And so we have received our bond rating. It is a AAA rating, and so we're really, really pleased with that. The next step is to sell the bonds at a competitive sale that is scheduled for next Thursday. Scott Keene is here with us again today, our municipal advisor. We think we're cautiously optimistic on that sale, and we think we're going to have a really good day. That's really all I have for you today. I'd be happy to address any questions if you had any.
Any questions of Lynn? Seeing none, thank you, Lynn. The next item we have on our agenda is a highway relinquishment overview by Jeff Schroeder.
Good morning. I am Jeff Schroeder, and my apologies for not having written materials for you today. During the last commission meeting, a question came up concerning highway relinquishment. We could not remember the last time we briefed you on that general topic. So I was nominated by Khalil to present to you today. As you know, we bring relinquishments to you as a part of our project approval process. And on this topic, I could speak for a very long time, but I hope to just give you a general overview. By statute, relinquish means to surrender all or part of the rights and responsibility relating to all or part of a segment on the state highway system to a local government. The local governments are cities or counties. We relinquish to cities the segments of the highway within the corporate limits, and to the counties the segments outside the corporate limits. Now, it seems to me that to understand why a highway should be relinquished, it helps to understand why a highway was originally included in the state highway system. So just a little history. There are generally three events, for lack of a better word, that led to the state highway system. First, in 1955, the legislature approved a map showing the existing roads it felt should be on the state highway system. That map, with one added route, became the legislatively directed highway system. Second, the legislature decided that every major city and village should at least have a state highway running up to its corporate limits. That applied to all cities and villages that had either 100 inhabitants or sufficient commerce. The legislature said at that time that sufficient commerce was 200,000 in gross revenue. I think times have changed. So NDOT met this mandate by constructing new or designating existing roadways called spurs or links to connect each qualifying community to the highways on the official map. NDOT sought to simply connect to the city. So they built the link or spur just up to the corporate limits and connected to an existing city street. Okay, so the third item is worth just a short discussion. In 1969, the legislature determined that Nebraska should have an integrated system of public roads, including state highways, county roads, and city streets. Here is how the integrated system worked. First, identify and map all rural and urban public roads. Identify what purpose each road serves. Group roads together based on function using the classification created by the legislature. So for example, if you think in terms of the city street or county road where your house is located, you're going to work, your street is a local road because it primarily provides access to individual properties. You leave your local street and enter onto a collector street. Then you connect to an arterial road that serves higher speed traffic headed to places of work or business. Near our homes, we use streets and roads that primarily serve local traffic. In comparison to roads and streets that serve the important local traffic needs, one of the highway classifications applicable to NDOT is the major arterial. The legislature said major arterials consist of the balance of routes which serve major statewide interests for highway transportation. This system is characterized by high-speed, relatively long-distance travel patterns. The legislature stated NDOT is responsible for the highways classified as interstate, the expressway system, and major arterials. And by rule and regulation, the state highway system is supposed to stay at around 10,000 miles of highway. The legislature then made the counties and the cities responsible for such roads that are local, collector, and other arterial. So to summarize, the state highway system serves statewide transportation interests with highways that connect to the surrounding states and carry major Nebraska traffic to all counties in the state and to our Nebraska rural and urban destinations. Our county and municipal systems are responsible for roads and streets that serve the local traffic needs vital to our local counties and cities. So that is the integrated system of public roads. So we have the state highway system with highways that are intended to serve statewide transportation needs. The legislature created a couple of methods to remove highways from the state highway system. The method we use is relinquishment. And we've found simpler ways to make the statutory process a little less archaic and convoluted. So let's talk about what are the typical relinquishment situations. Then we will discuss the process NDOT uses to accomplish relinquishment. As I said earlier, the word relinquish means to surrender all or part of one's rights and responsibilities. Relinquishment is a transfer from the state to the city or county of jurisdictional responsibility over a highway or highway segment. So after relinquishment, the city or county will have the ongoing duty to design, construct, reconstruct, maintain, and operate the relinquished segment. The key fact is that when there is a relinquishment, the state either resurfaces the existing highway or pays the city the cost of resurfacing the highway so that when it is relinquished, it's in good condition. This resurfacing project softens the burden on the local entity who will be responsible for the highway going forward. Also, although the state is relinquishing responsibility for the road, it ordinarily does not transfer title to the highway. The reasoning is the city does not need to own the road to operate and maintain it. So generally, there are three situations when NDOT seeks to relinquish a highway or highway segment. First, when state constructs a new state highway bypass around the outskirts of a city, or a highway is constructed on a new highway alignment. So after the new bypass or new alignment is constructed, it will carry the statewide traffic, and the old highway will now serve more local transportation functions. Our functional classification system will designate the new highway as a major arterial and the old highway as an other arterial or a collector. It makes sense under the functional classification system for the local to now be responsible for the old highway segment. Examples of this type include the Lincoln South Beltway, where former Highway 2 is now the Nebraska Parkway just outside this building, the Scribner US 275 bypass, the Kearney bypass, and the new US 30 4-lane alignment west of Fremont. So second, a state highway that is now completely located within an urban area. This is easier to explain with an example. So State Highway 85 in Douglas County along 84th Street. Originally, it was a suburban or rural connection of Highway 370 to the south and Highway 275 to the north. It connected Papillion on the south to Ralston on the north. Over time, the entire highway saw urban development. Arguably, now, Highway 85 no longer serves to connect the highways or the cities. Instead, it now serves primarily local urban traffic. From a functional classification system, viewpoint, it's no longer serves statewide transportation purposes. Papillion, La Vista, and a combination of Ralston and Omaha have now accepted relinquishment of the entire Highway 85, and so it's no longer on the state highway system. The other example is also in Omaha. Many years ago, Highway 38 was relinquished to Omaha because it was entirely located within the urban area and was no longer serving statewide interests. So third, a state spur or link, and the city has annexed property along the state spur or link. Remember, I said that spurs and links usually stopped at the corporate limits of the city or village they were serving. Over time, some of these cities expanded by annexing developed property out along the spur or link. Sometimes when a segment of the spur or link is now within the corporate limits, NDOT agrees to relinquish the new urban part of the spur or link inside the city. NDOT still meets its mandate to connect the community to the state highway system, but the community now has the ability to control what is essentially a city street. Examples of this type of relinquishment occurred in Peru a number of years ago and in Hickman. So now let's turn to the process NDOT uses to relinquish a highway. For a bypass project or new alignment project, early on, NDOT discusses the plan for a new bypass or new highway alignment with the city and the county. NDOT gets the agreement of the city or county that they will accept relinquishment of the old highway and integrate the old highway into their road or street system when the new alignment project is completed. NDOT will not go forward with the design of the project until it knows that its local partners are willing to accept relinquishment of the old highway. So funding and subsequent project agreements have provisions that recognize that relinquishment will occur formally near the end of the project life. So we bring the project and the relinquishment to you for your approval. Then NDOT builds the project and either resurfaces the existing road to be relinquished or coordinates with the local concerning providing the funding for their resurfacing project. A relinquishment agreement is then prepared by the legal division and is executed by the parties. When the relinquishment actually occurs, the district engineer notifies the local that the highway is relinquished. A formal relinquishment instrument is filed with the Register of Deeds, which is the step where the relinquishment becomes final. State law requires a negotiated memorandum between the parties concerning the transaction, and state law also contemplates a potential renegotiation of the terms of the relinquishment if economic conditions change in the future. Finally, under state and federal requirements, the state reserves certain rights concerning the relinquished segment. For example, if a property owner requests a change in control of access or other property interests or the sale of some of the land, NDOT must be consulted and NDOT will evaluate the proposed changes, in great part because state and federal dollars were used in acquiring those property rights originally. Now, we've encouraged our federal partners to not require us to reserve these rights, but the federal CFR does not give us much flexibility. So relinquishment helps us with our integrated system of public roads. Roads that truly serve local transportation needs are managed at the local level, and highways that serve the longer distant, high-speed needs remain on the state highway system. Relinquishment requires NDOT to work closely with our local partners, and it is not always clean and easy, but in most instances it works well. Any questions?
Just for clarification, I think I understood the right-of-way relinquished section is still state of Nebraska, right? Even though it's completely in the city, that city has no control of the right-of-way. So if they're replacing a water line in there, they've got to go through the permitting process.
Yeah.
I don't know that the cities understand that when we relinquish this. I'm pretty sure the smaller cities, I think the one that happened in my district, not understand that.
Well, so the routine sorts of work that needs to occur to operate and maintain that system happens with, transparently. They have the duty to operate and maintain it. And so they take care of anything related to the system itself. But if we're talking, for instance, if years ago NDOT paid damages to a property owner related to controlled access on a particular block, then all we're doing is we have to be consulted in those instances to first make sure whether the driveway at that location is appropriate from an engineering standpoint. But then secondly, if there was compensation provided to a property owner because of the control of access, sometimes those property rights have to be purchased back from the person who wants to change the driveway. But generally speaking, control of the roadway is now back in the locals' hands. I'm just saying that we're required by law to retain some of those interests. Now, as far as the property, the title issue, right now, many of our state highways that pass through our cities are on dedicated city street right-of-way. And so essentially what we've concluded is it doesn't matter who owns the land on which the public facility is located. It's about who has jurisdictional responsibility for it. So that's why NDOT no longer attempts to deed the property to the local, because ultimately, if the property comes back to us for some other reason in the future, then we'd have to have it deeded back. So we determined it didn't help us very much to transfer title, and it really didn't give the city any more control than they need.
One other thing I would just mention and point out to the commission, one of the statutory requirements of the highway commissioners, if there's a relinquishment in your district, you have to physically inspect it. It's one of the few requirements we have. Jeff didn't mention that.
That's what
So
happened.
if it happens in your district, you gotta go drive and look at the road.
That's what happened on on 84th Street in Omaha.
And we had no commissioner, and so you did it, I
Yeah.
think.
Yep.
For the, yep.
So you know about that situation, and yes, that is one of your duties, is to essentially make a report. And then ultimately, if there's a dispute between the city, county, or the state concerning the relinquishment, you may have to hold a public hearing. But as you can see, what we've tried to do is make the process so that it's understood from the very beginning how this is going to work. And so we've generally found that there aren't disagreements when we get to the end. Now, there are always, some modifications you have to make and issues that come up, but the process works pretty well. But you're absolutely right. The commission has a duty to inspect that segment before relinquishment occurs. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. The next item on our agenda is Highway 92, Wahoo to Omaha. Brandy?
Good morning. I might move this a little bit. Can you still hear me okay? Looks like you can. Perfect. Well, good morning again. Happy New Year to all of you. It's been just a few short weeks since we saw you last. For those of you who don't know me, Brandy Neiman, the roadway design engineer here at NDOT. It's probably been quite a while since I've been in front of you to present something. I think last time it might have been presenting on NEPA assignment. So it's been a number of years, I think, since I've been here. So happy to have the opportunity today to talk with you about an upcoming 4-lane expansion project along N92. I actually call it Me to Omaha. It might say Wahoo to Omaha on your agenda. And so we have some exciting news as we move this project forward. Let me give the technology. I do have slides. Let me give this a whirl. There we go. Perfect. All right. First, I want to get a little orientation going on for where this project is at, a little higher level look at where we're at. You might be familiar with it, but we'll take a moment anyway. This project is generally along N92. It's located in both Saunders and Douglas counties. It crosses NDOT district lines at the Platte River. So we have District 1 on the right. We have District 2 on the left. And you can see that there's also a short segment. It goes north-south and a little east-west along US 275. Just for some more geography, I guess, we have Wahoo over on the west. We have Fremont up to the north. And of course, we have Omaha to the east. All right, we'll zoom in a little bit closer on our actual project that we'll be moving forward with so you can see the limits a little bit more closely. This project does begin just west of me near the junction of US 77 and N92. We're actually actively designing a 4-lane expansion project for the US 77 Wahoo to Fremont Expressway project there. From that point, the project's going to extend towards the east. It's going to go through Meade. It's going to go through Utan. It's going to cross the Platte River. It'll cross the Elkhorn River. It's going to cross 2 at-grade railroad crossings, one with UP, one with BN. And it's actually going to end up at the junction of US 6 and N31 over on the east side, also called West Center Road. The last few miles of that, as you can see, is designated as US 275, and it's also that north-south segment is designated at US 275. It'll begin on the north at the junction with L28B or West Dodge Road, down towards the south, and then back over to the east to that junction of US 6 and N31. And you can also see maybe in some small print there that there's a free right movement that we call L28E that takes you from southbound US 275 to westbound N92. Let's try again. Perfect. All right. So both of these highways generally have the same cross section, the same typical cross section, 2 12-foot lanes. We have 10-foot wide shoulders, 8 feet of which is surfaced, with one area with a slight exception where we have 9-foot wide shoulders total width with 8 feet surfaced still. What you don't see, and maybe I should have driven longer as I was looking on Google here, you don't see the number of cars that are actually on this segment of highway or both of these segments of highway today. So right now, these highways, depending on where you're at, are experiencing between 5,900 and 9,000 cars a day. That's a lot of traffic for 2 lanes to carry. You can imagine, we didn't just drop these cars in here overnight. This traffic has been present for quite some time, some of these higher volumes. And so we actually knew quite a while ago that we would need to increase capacity in this location. So it amazes me what you find in your correspondence file someday, and I think I might have stumbled across the pictures when we started working on this project. It looks like it might have been quite some time ago, but we'll keep moving on here. In all seriousness, it wasn't quite that long ago, but it was a while ago when we started looking at this project, and we programmed some projects in the mid-90s to establish corridor protection for a new 4-lane facility along this route. So unlike most of our 4-lane expansion projects, these highways are not designated as part of the expressway system. Kyle is going to be talking about an expressway project next. But even without this designation, we knew that with the proximity to those communities that we mentioned, Omaha, Wahoo, Fremont, we have Waterloo in that area as well, that there was pretty high probability that the land in this area was ripe for development activity over the years. And so, you know, it also passes through those other communities, Meade and Utan, and those communities could also be developing through the years as well. And so, again, all of that would contribute more to the traffic demand and the need to look at this project further. All right, so the study that we did back in the 90s, it did what a lot of our studies do. It evaluated the alignment, it evaluated geometry, traffic volumes, intersections, bridges, the impacts of the project, and we put together some information and we made some recommendations based on what we were finding. We presented that information back in the 90s at a public meeting in Utan, and in 1996 actually. So we took those comments into consideration and we wrapped up that study by creating an alignment that would be used to file corridor protection for this route. As you know, this is a pretty important tool for the department, having corridor protection. It allows us the opportunity to look at permits that come in so that we can evaluate those for potentially protecting land that might be impacted by a future planned project. All right, so about the time I was graduating from high school, the department requested and was granted corridor protection in 1997 for the corridor. And since that time, we've undertaken several reviews for permits or potential permits that were occurring along this route. Many of the reviews happened before we had a formal permit application, and so no action was ever taken. Some resulted in the department saying, you know what, we don't have any action to take, and permits were issued. And more recently, we have had one occurrence working through an early acquisition. Just for a little bit more awareness, we do maintain maps on our website that show where we have corridor protection throughout the state. The arrows here is really just reflecting the corridor protection for this project. All right, when we originally considered the corridor, the plans that were created had some design elements that today, as we're resuming our efforts, we're going to take a closer look at based on our current design practices and philosophies. So this is an excerpt from the aerial scroll that was used in that study in the 90s. Here you can see that there was an alignment shift to the north of Meade that was proposed at the time. This is the very west end of the project, again, near the junction of US 77 and 92. A moment ago, I mentioned that we have that expressway project that we're designing right now. And so based on that design, a roundabout would be constructed at that junction of 77 and 92. So this means that our project is probably going to start just a little bit to the east of there so we can tie in to that roundabout. And it's probably unlikely that N92 would deviate from the existing alignment at this point. This is another example of an alignment shift that was proposed in the 90s. This is taking us south near UTAN. Again, this is an area that we'll have to consider carefully as we move forward, understanding the thinking behind why this alignment was chosen and whether or not it actually remains the best solution today for the project. All right, so about 2007, this project had essentially been shelved due to lack of funding to construct a new 4-lane facility in spite of the high traffic volumes that remained in the area. You know that these are really expensive investments for the department, and at the time we were really shifting our focus towards asset preservation. With the passage of the Build Nebraska Act, the Transportation Innovation Act, we were able to once again prioritize these types of improvements, this corridor and many others. And so this segment was actually selected for design during the second round of project selections for BNA and TIA. And so today we're really ready to begin working on that design effort again. Here we go. All right, unlike the study in the 90s, our philosophy for 4-lane expansions today is really making use of the 2+2 concept. It's probably something you've heard us present about a few times before, but as a reminder, this is where we maintain those existing 2 lanes and we add 2 lanes on one side or the other to create the 4-lane facility. So we're going to look at those existing lanes and where we can, we're going to plan to keep them on the same horizontal and vertical alignment and assume that we can resurface those lanes after we complete the additional 2 lanes. This allows the department to really stretch its resources a little bit further, minimizes project impacts, and it addresses those capacity demands, enhances safety, and really creates a modern highway facility. So what you see here is a typical cross-section for many of our rural 2+2 expressway projects that are currently under design or or actually having been constructed. This is not at all intended to be the typical cross-section for the N92 project. That's something that we're going to document and determine as we move forward with the design efforts. But generally, you can see that we're providing 2 12-foot lanes in each direction. There's a depressed median that's grass here between the 2 sets of lanes. We have wide shoulders, 8 foot on the outside, surfaced, and 4 foot rather, surfaced on the inside. Along this corridor, there are also 8 bridges that will be addressed as part of the project. At these locations, we'll generally start with considering adding a twin next to it. And so we would build that second bridge for the additional 2 sets of lanes directly adjacent to that existing bridge. There will be situations, however, where circumstances like the roadway profile, maybe bridge condition or hydraulic reasons require us to actually build both bridges new. The picture on the right I thought I would highlight is a picture of the bridges over the Platte River. These bridges were replaced in 2005 and they were shifted and they were built north of the existing structures, and those existing bridges were left in place. And that might be like, why did we do that? I can tell you that there was a lot of hydraulic studies and research done at that time that led to the decision, as well as considering the access that there's properties on the island in the middle of the river. And so I suspect that as we resume our design efforts for the N92 corridor, we're going to have to do some of those same careful analyses of the river, of the hydraulic situations in this area to determine where we build those adjacent bridges. There's 7 bridge-sized box culverts along the project that we'll also be addressing. And again, there's those 2 at-grade railroad crossings, one with BN and one with UP, that in the 90s had grade separations as potential options. Those decisions will all be evaluated as we move forward with the project. All right, as we apply 2+2, we're gonna start the project by doing some assessment of the existing lanes for those 3R standards to see if we need to make any improvements along the existing lanes. But ultimately, as you can guess, a 4-lane expansion project is going to result in some extensive grading. It's going to have utility work. It's going to require right-of-way acquisition along the entire length of the project. There are intersection improvements that will also be considered. 2 areas have already been addressed. They're not constructed, but they're being designed. One, again, at that west end at US 77 and N92, where we have a roundabout being built. And if you can recall the geography lesson we had earlier, up at the northeast end at the junction of US 275 and L28B, we have a roundabout that's being designed there as well, but may need some adjustments or some tweaks to make our new 4-lane facility tie in. These other intersection locations that we have listed on the screen will also be studied, and we'll consider intersection design alternatives throughout the design process. I would also just point out that the intersection way towards the east end of the corridor, US 275 and Skyline Drive, actually has an interim improvement that is being developed right now, and again, will require some modifications as we develop the 4-lane. Just want to take a moment to highlight some of the changes that have occurred along this corridor since the 90s. This is by no means all of them, but they were pretty noticeable as I was reviewing the corridor. So there's, again, a few slides to highlight the differences. This is starting on the west end, just outside of UTAN. We have new businesses that have developed. You can see the circled areas where we're highlighting then versus now. Heading towards the Platte River, actually just west of the Platte River, you can see some new housing developments on both the north and the south side of N92, but probably more so on the south, where we have some residential developments along the river. We jump across the river. You can see that this is the intersection of 264th Street or Two River State Rec Road. There are several new businesses on both sides of N92, and in fact, the aerial doesn't do it justice, but on the right side, much of that land to the south is actually water, as that's where Martin Marietta is located. And finally, I'm going to have to jump between 2 slides here, but this is towards the very east end of the project, just to get the scale of it. That's what it looks like in the 90s when we started looking at the corridor. And today you can see that this is really exploded with residential development. There's a lake community up near the junction of West Dodge and US 275 in the northwest, and then really an explosion of dense residential development just to the east of the Elkhorn River. All right, finally, let's spend a little bit of time looking at where we're at today and where we're heading with this project. So first, I want to point out that we'll be developing this project as a federally aid eligible project. This really allows us to maximize our flexibility and use various funding sources, including grants that might become available. In the next couple of weeks, maybe sooner, we'll be publishing an RFQ, a request for qualification, so that we can select a consultant to help us deliver this project. In 2023, I'd point out that we actually flew this project. We conducted an aerial survey in preparation, trying to get a little bit ahead. It's a long corridor, and it takes a bit of effort to map all of those things that are out there today. So we did that in 2023, but we're probably going to have to, in this year, go out and get some additional pickup survey and start some environmental surveys, probably middle to later part of this year. From there, we're going to start that NEPA process, where we're evaluating those environmental resources along with some preliminary design efforts. We're going to take a look at what we did in the past. We're going to apply the resources and the conditions that are there today, along with our design philosophies and practices today, and start developing alignment and alternatives for the project. During this time, I'd point out that we'd also be conducting public engagement, just like we do on our other projects. That'll help us inform the decision-making process. Oops. Too soon, too soon. Back, there we go. So overall, no, I went too far. Overall, I'd expect that phase to take about 18 months to complete, where we're doing that NEPA preliminary design and public engagement. And we would conclude that phase of the project with the final NEPA decision document, maybe in the 2027 timeframe. After that, we start final design and maybe the right-of-way acquisition process so that we can have this project ready to go. What you would probably notice also is it just says beyond for construction. We don't have a construction year identified for this project, and it might be constructed in multiple construction packages. With that, though, we recognize that, again, this is a really high priority corridor with a tremendous amount of traffic volume. And so we're really working to have this project ready and available should different funding sources become available. We've got to be flexible and take advantage of as many opportunities we can to get this project over the finish line using grants or other resources. So now I can go to that slide. You can see we're really just getting started with the project, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. As long as it didn't happen when I was a sophomore in high school, I probably can't help with those.
Any questions of Brandy? Seeing none? Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.
The next item of business that we have is Highway 75, Nebraska City to Omaha. Kyle, you'll be presenting.
All right, yes. Yes, good morning. Good morning, members of the Highway Commission, Director Kramer, members of the audience. I do have the privilege here this morning to discuss the US 275 corridor. Sorry, I've done a lot of work on US 275, the US 75 corridor, Murray to Nebraska City. Today's discussion, we will focus on a few areas. I think I would have learned from Brandy on this delay here. So just really overall orientation of the progress on the expressway system. We will shift focus into a little more detail of the US 75 corridor and the next steps geared towards that. So as many of you are aware, in 1988, legislature placed into law the creation of the expressway system. The Nebraska Expressway System was expanded into 16 different corridors encompassing nearly 600 different miles. We focus that development and priority of the expressway system on socioeconomic data. So this is employment data, population, economic activity, the connecting of these urban centers to the interstate with populations of 15,000 people or more, really to serve that commercial traffic so that both the local and, again, those heavy truck traffic of over 500 or more ADT, and then just overall continuity really between these expressway segments. So now we're going to shift down to here's a map of the expressway system. I do want to focus on a little bit of development on this. You've had some other presentations on some of these here recently, but do want to just orient us in terms of the overall development of this expressway system. So one, the 275 corridor, as well as 81. And so you've had some recent presentations on 275, regarding bonding, different things like that. But we have two segments that are still in place on that one. The first is the Norfolk to Wisner segment that has shifted into more of the final design and right-of-way acquisition. And so that we are getting closer to moving into those letting and construction packages for that. The last segment on 275 is the Wisner to West Point segment, which is just near at the heels of that, to where we are doing design and environmental assessments through that to develop a preferred alternative and work towards completion of that overall 275 expressway. Moving towards the southwest, we have the US 81 corridor. So this is a 40-mile segment between York and Columbus. We have made good progress here on the overall environmental process through that, and we've had a public hearing, and we are getting very close into moving into more of the final design and acquisition through that corridor. That is broken up currently right now into 6 different construction packages. So I do want to move over towards the Panhandle area and give a shout out to this project here on US 26. So this is just east of Scottsbluff. So this would be Minutair to 385. And so this is a continuation of that 4-lane here on US 26. So this would just start just east of Minutair and move towards US 385 to connect those corridors. So that is currently the main expressways in development. And so I do want to, we're going to shift down here towards a little more focus on that expressway map towards the southeast. And so we have this blue segment, the number 7, and no surprise that US 75 Nebraska to City to Murray corridor. And so let's get a little more focus on that. So first of all, this 75 corridor was split up into 4 different corridors. First is the Plattsmouth to Bellevue, which is about 2.5 to 3 miles. We have Murray to Plattsmouth, that was 10 miles. Union to Murray, nearly 7.5 miles, and then Union South, which is down actually just takes you down in towards Nebraska City and stops short of the interchange there on Nebraska 2, nearly 10 miles. And so this corridor was developed with an environmental impact statement for the entire corridor, started around in 1971, completed around in 1979. We've since done supplemental EISs or reevaluations to that environmental document, or really the moving into construction packages along this corridor. The first, this high level, is Platt Smith to Bellevue. This corridor here is fairly complex, and so I was able to find this cool aerial video to really just kind of show you the magnitude of this project. So again, that nearly $3 million, a 3-mile project that's just north of the Platte River and has been completed. The next, as we continue to move south, I didn't have as cool of maps, so we do have this kind of boring location map for the project, but it does at least show some orientation of where we are here. So this is if we move south, the Platt Smith to Murray project, a more recent construction completion here in later part of 2023, and estimated at $55 million for this corridor. So this really wasn't intended to be a history lesson, but just orient us of this really development of this US 75 corridor. And so now we're going to focus on really these remaining segments. So the first, as we continue to move south, Union Murray, nearly 7 miles, and currently programmed at around $81 million. And then continuing south again is the Union South, which would be, and it gets moved south down towards Nebraska City. Again, it does terminate prior to that interchange on with Highway 2. So this is currently programmed at $106 million. The first thing we do is when we're going to make this assessment is we will look to see that overall cost estimate and see if we can, based on the scope of the project, of what that actual project costs will be. And so to align with those four criteria that we talked about earlier, we are going to move forward with this kind of project purpose. This is again the NDOT project purpose in terms of how we are going to develop these projects. So first is to fulfill that legislative intent set forth in 1988. We're going to look, these projects really focus on improving that regional connectivity, maintaining that convenient highway access. And so again, with the completion and development of these expressway systems, we're looking to connect those different communities alongside. We're going to also look to reduce annual corridor delay. Now this is for both the local traffic and for those heavy truck, commercial traffic that we have through there. And so these corridors, as Brandy talked about with 92, there's a lot of congestion. There is limited passing capability. So these corridors are in desperate need of adding this capacity. And then lastly, we're going to maximize utilization of that existing infrastructure. So we do have a 2-lane segment through here. So we have the existing lanes. We have 7 existing bridges through the corridor. We have right-of-way. We have development. And so we're going to look to maximize utilization of that existing infrastructure in place as we move forward. We're going to do that by, as Brandy described earlier, this 2+2 approach. And so this looks probably very familiar to what you've seen already here. But again, it's utilizing that existing alignment. And then we are going to place 2 new lanes offset of that to create our 4-lane expressway. That existing lane, will do an asset management review of that to where can we maintain, rehabilitate, or does it need to be replaced as we go through this? And so we'll do that for both the pavement and those existing bridges through there. Through this process, we'll also look to do any type of safety improvements or enhancements as we create this 4-lane corridor. So next steps, we're going to move into the overall planning process, which is really a coupling or marriage of really the environmental and design phase. So we'll work through what's called this NEPA process to where we'll provide design support for that decision-making process as we start to develop this corridor. So what does that look like? And so as kind of Brandy described earlier, walking through this, we're going to first have to do some different analysis on those existing lanes. And so again, we'll do an analysis of any kind of deficiencies or improvements that need to be made along those existing lanes. At the same time, this is a little different color than I had before. You see those kind of transparent lines on either side. So for today, we're going to assume that's around 200 feet. So we're going to assess this corridor, the entire 17 miles, around 200 feet each side, and we're going to look at impacts to the different resources. So those impacts can be wetlands, streams, channels, historic properties, threatened and endangered species, property. So these are actually the people that live out there in terms of potential for relocations, the farmland pivots. So things of that nature here as we look through to analysis of the corridor. We'll collectively develop this, and then we'll make the assessment of which side has the least amount of impacts through there. From there, we were going to look to reduce and avoid impacts as we refine that design. And so now let's get into really the schedule of this. And so we do have a, we're looking at doing an RFQ here for this project here in around the late summer here in 2025. So Brandy mentioned Highway 92, that is coming out sooner. This one is going to be a little later in the future here. So I wasn't really hard on overall dates with this, but just really want to describe the process. So again, getting into that, as starting with that, we'll look to solicit for professional services. So these are services such as environmental design, bridge design, and public involvement. And then we'll have that partnership between our internal and external partners, and we'll work through what is called that NEPA process. Brandy talked about an 18-month schedule. So this can be anywhere from that 18 to 24 months. And so first thing we're going to do is we're going to assess, we have that environmental impact statement for this corridor. Does it make sense to continue to supplement that? Or does it make sense to maybe potentially start a new document through this? And so we'll first make that assessment. Generally, sometimes it's about the same amount of time, whether you start from scratch or whether you adopt that other document. So once we get through that NEPA decision-making process and have that preferred alternative, we'll move into more of that final design and right-of-way acquisition process. So this is around another 1 to 3 year process in terms of actually getting all of that right-of-way. If you ask Nathan sitting here, it does take some time to acquire any kind of real property here for a nearly 17-mile corridor. And then we'll move into letting and construction. As Brandy had before, she had that beyond. So this is in the same philosophy in terms of that is we need to start this planning process because we do have some different funding availability that may beat the current schedule. If you look at your Build Nebraska ACTIA programs, this is slotted for around 2033 timeframe. Again, we are looking to position ourselves to take advantage of different funding opportunities, whether that be, again, that we've had some swings in administration. So the funding opportunities could come to us and we need to be prepared. So then we also have grant opportunities that could come around. And as Lynn talked about before, we do have the bonding capability. So with the development of these expressway systems, we want to, make sure that we are prepared to take advantage of that and continue with the commitment on completion of these expressway systems. So with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Any questions for Kyle? If not, thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is winter operations update. Tom?
First, thank you for the opportunity to talk about NDOT's winter operations. As you can imagine, I'm going to kind of step through this, kind of how the process works for us. There we go. We figure winter operations being October through May, but we don't, that's kind of misleading. And I'll take a step back. We actually started in April. In April of every year, we order the bulk of our salt. We save about $10 a ton when we order it off peak season. So we'll place the bulk of our orders in April. And in June, we start ordering all of our snowplow blades that we need for the next winter, getting ready to give them ample time to come into us. And then about September, we start ordering all of our liquids that you see us use out on the roads and start getting trucks ready to go. And then by October, we're ready to roll. Some years we get snow late October. Some years like this year, we don't get any snow until late December, but we're prepared, and that's what's important. Oops, I went the wrong way. Apologize. There's a lot of coordination that goes into us being successful with snow removal and doing winter ops out there. Operations division, which is what I'm part of, we do a lot of the coordination with the districts. The districts are responsible for the snow removal, and they do a fantastic job out there. Where we get involved is when we start to get big storms or other states are closing the interstates and things like that. It's when operations really gets heavily involved with it and does a lot of the coordination, whether it's moving resources, make sure the districts have enough resources between staffing and equipment to operate throughout the storm. We do a lot of WebEx meetings. We do a lot of chats. We partner with National Weather Services across the state, and we use Goodland, Kansas, and we use Cheyenne, Wyoming to assist us with the 3 in Nebraska. Communications division gets involved with a lot of the messaging that we have to do to try to alert the public as to what's coming. how our road conditions are doing. We work with NEMA very closely when there's a declaration in, and then it opens up our resources to help counties and cities. Also allows other states to come down and help us, as we did last year when we brought South Dakota into Nebraska to help us up in the Northeast. Amanda, I'm pointing at. There we go. We start out, again, I kind of step back. I say October's is when we're ready. We kind of step back. In September, we meet with usually Colorado, Wyoming, Kansas, and Nebraska meet in the West, and we talk about closures and how to prepare for them and what we're doing and what they're doing different. We talk about what we're doing, and we pick up on things. We do a lot of knowledge sharing at that event. And then after that, this year we met with South Dakota, Iowa, and Minnesota, got together in the Northeast and talked about and shared ideas and shared technologies and just knowledge. And then we also talk about closures. When South Dakota closes, how's that impact us? They understand what they need to tell me so that I can get that word out to everybody, because we know all the traffic's going to come south and try to hit us. Same with 70. When 70 closes, everything tries to come north, and then when we close, they go both directions. So that is a great opportunity for us to talk to other states, other DOTs, to kind of organize how we're going to go into winter in the event that we have closures. We do a lot of email groups. Again, we do a lot of messaging. We've gotten very good. Our communications division does a fantastic job developing messages that we're out ahead of things. The travelers know what they're coming into. They don't get there, they already know it most of the time. I went too far. Hours of operations. We are 24/7, obviously, on the interstate. We are on the expressways. We do have some areas in the rural part of the state that we don't operate 24 hours a day. There's no set hours. The folks are out there as long as they can be. We don't have staffing to run 24 hours, say, in the Sandhills, but we do run very long days up there. Then we get into closing and opening of the interstate, rolling closures, a lot of local coordination, truck parking, hotels. All these things come into account when we start to close the interstate. We work very closely with our emergency managers. They tell us when their communities are filling up, then we roll the closure back. So if we close in Sidney and they fill up, we start to roll it back to Ogallala. From Ogallala, we keep going to North Platte. We just keep rolling that closure back to make sure that we get everybody accommodated. The key is our messaging. Again, I've talked about that. We do a lot of messaging. We want people to get off the road before they get to Sidney or they get to Ogallala. And for the most part, I would say we have a lot of success as long as we're out messaging what they're running into. We in operations, we run off of 6 different types of forecasts. Each one of those forecasts means something different to us, and it impacts how we address it. Obviously, 1 through 3, the districts are just staying in tune with us. They're watching all the forecasts. They're on the NWS chats. We're talking with weather people. We're kind of seeing what's coming up. And I will say that different recently compared to in the past is we're getting notifications almost 72 hours in advance that something's coming, sometimes before that. This last one we had down south, we knew about this 4 days before that this could possibly come. It was just a question of where it was going to line up, and fortunately it didn't line up on us. It lined up on our partners in Kansas, but we started prepping for that. Then as we get into 4, 5, and 6, that's when we know that we're going to have impacts to the road. That prompts us to get out ahead of it. We set up chats. We do WebExes with all of our districts, our administration communications. Weather Service joins us in every one of those chats to give us what they're forecasting. And many times when we start a WebEx like that, we will follow it up. We'll have one in the afternoon, we'll have one in the morning, we'll have one in the afternoon, and we'll follow that storm all the way through. And then when it does start to impact us, our weather partners, they want to know about it because they're sitting in a room and they're looking at everything and we're out in it. So we have a great relationship with them. We feed off of one another and we help one another throughout a storm. Again, I talk about National Weather Service partnerships. We have what's called Slack, which is a chat. Some of our folks in operations in our emergency or our operations center in Omaha, they're seeing what Schools are saying, a lot of schools want to know from us whether they should close or not. They're able to see what's going on in Slack. We're responding there. Weather Service is responding. Schools are responding. Emergency managers. So it's really a collaborative effort when snow starts to come. Again, they send us packets. I've got several packets over for what's coming this weekend. No snow, just a lot of cold. We'll start messaging for that probably today, tomorrow, for that type of thing. Again, closures are big. We never take closing the interstate lightly. We understand the impacts that it has when we close the interstate. We make that determination. Something we've started doing probably 5 years ago is preemptive closures. In other words, we're trying to close that road ahead of time rather than let it close itself. We have accidents. We can't get tow trucks out to get people pulled out, to get the traffic cleared. So we close early if we're very confident that the storm is going to come and we think we're going to force us a closure. So we do preemptive. We partner with our surrounding states. Emergency managers know it's coming. Everybody knows what we're thinking and how we're going to do it, so everybody's prepared. That just works so good to work with locals and be out front with people. And again, our messaging is the key to this. A new tool. Oh, is it me or you? Okay, try it. There we go. A new tool we have this year, actually we deployed the very last storm out west, is these variable advisory speed signs. We're active from the Wyoming line to Big Springs now. From what I understand, during the last event, we put the advisories out for 65 and then reduced it down to 55 because of ice. My understanding is that what we could see, traffic did adhere to what we were doing. We had very few accidents out there. I believe there's some validity in this. We should have turned on all the way, hopefully the next week or so, we're going to have it to Ogallala. And then our plan is these signs are erected all the way to Overton, and that project will be complete. So by the end of the winter, we should be from Wyoming line all the way to Overton with these. They've become a great tool. Right now, we reduce speed because of road conditions, visibility, and of course, if we have queuing issues and stuff like that to try to alert people. We have a state operations center in Omaha. Our operations centers are 24/7 operations. We do all the DMS messaging you see on our DMS boards and our portable boards out there. They monitor the state radio system, so they hear different things when law enforcement may have an accident and we have a closure, a lane closure, and they're hearing that and we're responding. They're letting our folks know what's going on. Obviously, we have about over 300 cameras across the state. So they monitor a lot of the cameras, especially in our high volume, traffic volume areas. And they see accidents or they see things, hazards that might be going on. And we can prepare our districts. We can call them before something happens, possibly. We also have the Motorist Assist program in Omaha, which is actually turned out to be a huge success for us. And they manage that system for us as well. I talked a lot about messaging, and it is really the key to what we do. We're blessed to have a communications division that joins us in every one of our calls. We talk about how to message. We work with State Patrol to make sure that we're all messaging the same message. NWS partners with us on messaging because we think it's really important what we put out, NSP's putting out, Weather Service is putting out when it comes to conditions of the roadways. Plus, we have our 511 also that helps us. We try to, if we have a warning in an area, like a blizzard warning, we try to let the traffic know that's coming. It doesn't do us a lot of good to put blizzard warning in the middle of a blizzard. What does us good is the day before to say blizzard warning beginning at 4 p.m. in this area or something. And unless that travelers know what they're coming into or possibly could come into. We use social media quite a little bit. We're on Facebook, of course, Twitter. You have to forgive me. I'm not quite as techy as communications is. They just take care of us and they get that out on all the platforms that are available to us. 511, of course, I think that's become a huge success nationally. Most states, at least our surrounding states, all have 511. We do get a lot of hits on it. The plow cams, plow tracker's been huge for us. We do get people that watch that plow tracker. And they can see where the plows are at. They know if a plow is coming. It works very well, especially in the rural areas with schools that start, and they can get on there and they can see when a plow was on a particular road, whether they run buses or it alerts them to call us. And they will, they'll call the superintendents, local superintendents, and they'll talk about road conditions if you had a plow out there and things of that nature. Also, all the cameras are there. We put weather warnings on there. Again, it's another method we use to inform the traveling public of what conditions are. I mentioned that we have about 300 cameras, a little over 300 cameras out there. We are updating those cameras to be more high definition. They tell a great story for folks that want to look. This is what you see on 511 when you see the colors, and this is a little different. Each one of the colors represents something. One of the things we've done in the past is we've called it impassable. We call it now closed. When we see a red, that's an indication that a road is closed. That's kind of an update, but each one of them means something. Our districts report, our supervisors report in. They either put it on themselves or they call our operations center, and they'll report it, and we update roads continuously. Reopening the interstate. This is probably more critical than closing the interstate, because as you can imagine, when we go to reopen the interstate, we can be in a community, say Ogallala, that has 1,000 trucks parked all over the place. 2 years ago, we had them parked in the fairgrounds in North Platte, which turned out not to be a good thing for the city because people were stuck trying to come out of there, and it created another problem. But we have to put trucks somewhere, and they elected to use the fairgrounds. Well, as soon as people get wind that we're going to reopen, they start lining up to leave. So we've really tried to gradually open the interstate. Instead of saying at 9 a.m. we're going to throw all the gates open, now we just we'll start in the east and kind of let that traffic go, and then kind of work our way back to the west and let it so that we don't get a bottleneck of traffic. That causes a more problem. Then we wind up with another closure. So reopening, it takes a lot of strategy. There's a lot of coordination goes into opening these interstates when we open them back up. And the same with when Kansas closed the other day, last week, I think. They were calling me when they were opening so that we knew what to expect. Because then our traffic starts diverting back down. We also message for KDOT. We put messages at Aurora. We put messages as they went south that Kansas was closed. So, and then when they open, we shut those messages off, and then people are turning around and things like that. So reopening a road, reopening an interstate is a lot of coordination to make that successful. We use several pieces of equipment. New to us over the last few years is the tow plows. We have a lot of those in Omaha that run. It's essentially two plows. You can see them illustrated there. We have blowers. We have the larger snow blowers that we deploy across the state. We move those across the state. Wherever we need them, we move them. Last year, when we had the big snows in the Northeast, we brought about 65 resources down here into Grand Island and deployed them all over to the north and to the east to assist. We had about 14 of our 20 blowers running in the east during that storm. So we're moving people and resources constantly, depending on the storm and the availability that the current area has. We use a lot of liquids. You see, we use a lot of salt brines today. We use magnesium chloride today, and we use a beet juice, which is an ag byproduct, to assist us. And of course, we use salts. So I said that that gets you through May. What we do in May, again, in April, then we're ordering for the next winter. We hold an event every year for our people, and they test their skills at our snowplow rodeo. And I think that was out there a lot last year. Communications did a lot of social media on that. And it's an opportunity for all of our folks to get together. They compete in their own districts, and then we take the top two, we bring them in, and we hold a state competition. And they get to hone their skills and practice their skills against other competitors across the state. From there, we let them go to a national competition. Proud to say in Nebraska, we got 6th out of the national competition out of all the states and counties and cities last year. We had a 6th and a 31st finisher. So we were very proud of our people that were able to compete in that and qualify for that. few pictures from what we faced last year in the Northeast and trying to blow some of the stuff, try to get these roads open, to get traffic moving, mainly commerce moving. We have to get commerce moving. Last year, we got into a situation where our Walmarts in Norfolk were running out of groceries. And we had to deploy a lot of resources to try to bring a Walmart trucks in from the north and bring them down to get them into Walmart in Norfolk. And this is the stuff we're faced with a lot of times. And when we have emergencies, is we work with the locals, we work with commerce, we work with NEMA to get commerce and get goods where they need to go in the event of an emergency. With that, I'll take any questions.
Tom, you talked about the variable advisory speed signs that you're putting really from the western part of the state, moving back to the east on the interstate. Are there plans to have those types of signs on the expressways or on other US highways that are not interstate?
At this point, we don't have that programmed on the expressways. My assumption is that would be something we're looking at. We're obviously concentrating on the interstate first. Right now, our project will take it to Overton. We'll be introducing a new project that bring it from Overton across District 4 and then ultimately into District 1. I would assume that, yes, we will start looking at expressways of that nature on the 4 lanes.
Thank you.
They've proven to be very good so far. And the very first one we did, they really have proved themselves.
Tom, I have
to
a
be worthy.
question also. You mentioned all their processes and whatever, and, you know, I know they work great from my experience with cities and counties also, but some time ago, we had a presentation here. Where are you at with staffing? Because I know out in some of the rural areas, you're having a real struggle trying to find people to go out there and operate snow plows and other equipment. I mean, it's not just a winter situation, but I know that it does affect your responses out there in those areas.
Certainly. I would say we're always short-staffed. We probably will be for a while. I think we've made great strides, though, compared to where we were at 2 years ago. And I think Director Kramer can validate that. We've made great strides. Are we short-staffed in some of the rural areas? We are. A lot of that is too. We just don't have the population as much as we did 20 years ago in them areas. That's causing a little bit of it. Younger generations aren't coming home to the rural areas like they did before, things like that. But I think we've done a good job. I think we've made strides. It's not perfect, but I think we've made strides. Do you want to?
Good.
You agree with that?
We've seen good hiring practices over the last year and a half. We've also made sure that we focus on safety and getting those employees trained so that they know how to be safe, because you can't go into the first snow and just start from scratch. We have people that are very sophisticated, have decades under their belt in terms of being able to navigate these roads in very adverse conditions. So we're getting staffed up. We have a very young, in terms of experience, districts so there's challenges, but we'll keep working through it.
Good. Anything else for Tom?
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. The next item we have on our agenda for today is the proposed 2025 Highway Commission meetings calendar. Amanda?
Yes, commissioners, at the last Highway Commission meeting, it seemed that the agreement was to have the 2025 meetings at 8:30 a.m. Initially, we had March 28th, but we are moving to March 21st, June 27th, August 22nd, October 24th, and December 12th. If that is still the case, then I believe that you're ready to take a vote on that.
Move approval of this calendar for the 2025.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the calendar as presented. Amanda?
Koppel,
Yes.
Hawks.
Yes.
Kindig,
Yes.
Leaf Green,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Mello,
Yes.
Wolford.
The next item of business on our agenda today is the election of 2025 Commission Chair and Vice Chair. Amanda?
I provided the history of chair and vice chair, and it's typically rotated amongst the commission members. So if we follow that same rotation, it appears that Commissioner Wolford will be the next chair. And Commissioner Leaf Green will continue to be the vice chair. He was appointed in October to fill the vacancy of Commissioner Fagerland. So that would just be a continuation.
I so move.
It's been moved and seconded for Commissioner Wolford to be the chair for 2025 and Commissioner Leaf Green to be the vice chair for 2025. Amanda, if you would call the roll.
Koppel.
Yes.
Hawks.
Yes.
Kindig.
Yes.
Leaf Green. McGinnis.
Yes.
Mello.
Yes.
Wolford.
Congratulations. The next item that we have on our agenda is for public comment, but before we go there, I see Sarah back there, and at our last meeting, she reported that there were 3 counties in District 6, which I represent, that did not have transit. As a result of that meeting, I was also contacted by Hooker County up in Mullen that they were possibly losing their transit system also. Sarah, do you have an update for us? I guess it concerns me where there's no medical services up in those areas. A lot of those people do come to North Platte or Scotts Bluff or whatever for medical services. And that would be 4 counties in District 6 that.
So since you and I had last chatted, we just received notice, I believe it was yesterday, the day before yesterday, that Grant County is also going to end service. They're unable to find drivers, from my understanding. And so we're looking at options on who could fulfill that void right now. It's not going to be a quick turnaround. We also are dealing with a little bit of service interruption up north already. So, but we have 2 other providers that are in District 6 and just on the line, so it would fall into District 5 that we're looking at maybe potentially being able to fulfill that, but we're on the hunt now to see what we can do. But yeah, since then we have had others pull out just because there is a shortage of drivers and there is a lot of paperwork that goes along with it, so.
Well, and I know the population is sparse up there, but there are a lot of people who need that service to get to medical care and other business in some of the larger communities out in that area. And so I appreciate your work on that. And I guess I'm sorry to hear that there's another county.
Well, you're not out of it yet. You're going to be pulled in to help me, hopefully, so.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. As I announced at the beginning of the meeting, there would be a time for public input, and that time is now. We ask that if you do want to come forward and address the commission, that you come to the podium, state your name, spell your name for the record, and we're open to your public comment. Okay.
Thank you for having these public meetings. I know they're required, but it's very informational. And my name is Jerry Johnson, Jerry Johnsson. Legally, it's Gerald, but there were too many Gerald Johnsons in Phelps County, so I picked up a nickname. I'm on my 3rd term as mayor of Wahoo, halfway through that term. In between that, I was a state senator and down here with you a few times. Several things on your agenda that really touched my heart today. To see this project to Omaha actually on an agenda. It's been a long time. We've been waiting for that. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the roundabout that was just finished. There's always some pain with that, but there's some great gains with it. It's been open about maybe close to a month, and it's working well. I know it's not completed because it will be 4-lane. When the 4-lane is done to Meade, then a 2nd lane will be put in. And I've told people there might be some other changes to it. One of the comments we've heard is it's so close to Lake Wanahoo, will there be a guardrail at that corner on the northwest side? I said, I don't know. We'll see, when we get a little bit closer. So another area before I get into the presentation that was made, it really helped me in my presentation. But the expressway, in the 80s and 90s, I lived in Shelby, and I was part of Representative York and Polk County on that commission. Glad to see that project is moving forward. Wahoo was part of that expressway system, and through Wahoo now, of course, it is completed. When the 4-lane went around Wahoo, we didn't call it a bypass. That was kind of a negative. We just put the expressway wraps around Wahoo. People have asked us for communities that have their state highway relinquished during that time period. They have asked us, what happened with the traffic? The only thing we lost was the semis. Our sales tax revenue, of course, we're a growing community, but our sales tax revenue, as one indicator, has continued to grow ever since. So it's not as negative when they take the highway. It was 77 through town. So I do appreciate relinquishing that highway. So now for Wahoo to Omaha. When I first went into the legislature in 2013, Omaha Steel had just announced that they were going to move to Wahoo. And their concern was the traffic, the people needed to relocate, and some of them would still commute back and forth. We've gained population because of that. They got about 250 employees. But as you can see by the presentation, a lot has developed on the west side of Omaha, and a lot more traffic is coming through there, and some of Omaha Steel employees do still commute back and forth, but they do comment about, especially when you get to Meade into Omaha, the conditions of the road, the hills, and a lot more traffic. When Governor Heineman was in office, his parents lived in Wahoo. One of his priorities was getting that completed. And of course, there's been some time lapse on that. But anyway, moving this onto the agenda is very critical. We see whenever there's the interstate between Lincoln and Omaha are closed, we see that traffic double coming around the expressway and then 4-lane to Lincoln. It's 20 miles of road from West Omaha out. They're glad when they get to Wahoo and it's 20 miles to Lincoln if that's where they're going. One thing about, this is a Saunders County report, but and it's been probably a year or so. There's more traffic coming into Saunders County than leaves Saunders County to work. But we have a lot of people that are moving into Wahoo, a lot of young people, just because of what we have going, but just rather have live in Wahoo instead of driving that route. So this is going to be a great project. I know we've had a lot of people say, well, I know they're designing things different, and I was kind of glad to see at least a little bit of a format of what it might look like, and kind of some dates on it is very important. So another thing, I go back quite a few years. I'm from Phelps County. See, some of the senators have gone, but hauling cattle into South Omaha. At that point, it was on 30A, but I know the semi drivers really hated that last stretch. So most of those are probably gone by now. But anyway, that's my comments. Just glad to see it on the agenda, and glad to see that I know you have a process, and we understand that. But this is a great time, I think, for West Omaha to move out west. So thank you for your time. Take any questions if you have. Would comment, say Senator Mello, when Omaha Steel moved out, Burke Harr who was a senator at the time, he and I tried to get something going. We knew there was a process, but I'm glad to, I was hoping maybe he'd be here today, but I'll see him at the Capitol someday. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Anyone else like to address the commission? Seeing none, remarks from the chair. I guess I would just like to say that I appreciate the opportunity to serve as the chairman of this last year. I appreciate the fact that we had several state senators show up today. I think it's always important that they show interest in the transportation field, you know, across the whole state. It's very important to our commerce and to our citizens to have a safe and progressive transportation systems. That's really all I have. The next thing on the agenda there is public meetings calendar, and I'll turn that back to Amanda.
Yeah, so two things. NDOT will be having a public information meeting for the Wisner to West Point US 275 project from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. on January 21st at Wisner Pilger Schools in Wisner, Nebraska. And then the next scheduled Highway Commission meeting will be on March 21st, 2025 at 8:30 a.m. at the Fremont City Council Chambers in Fremont, Nebraska.
Any other comments, questions from the commission? If not, I would adjourn the meeting. Thank you.